Hey, you're back at the Faculty Factory podcast, and I'm Kim Skorupski at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas, with a new friend, a new wonderful guest to the podcast, Dr. Lekshmi Santhosh. Hi, Lekshmi.
Hello, thanks so much for having me on today. Really excited to be here.
This is going to be a great one, friends. And let me tell you, how did we get Dr. Santhosh? From Dr. Josh Hartzell. If you're listening to this podcast regularly, you remember Dr. Joshua Hartzell's episode on excellent leadership. It's number 329. Slide on back or down or wherever, find that episode. And he said, you know what? You have to get Lekshmi on the podcast. And so she got here because Josh said, she's an innovative leader, educator. She'd be a great podcast guest. Absolutely. That's how we got her here. And she was so gracious and said, absolutely. In fact, she has this cool title. So, speaking of titles, who is Dr. Lekshmi Santhosh? She is an associate professor of clinical medicine in pulmonary, critical care, and hospital medicine, the Department of Medicine Associate Chair for Mentorship and People Development. I love that title. And
Thank
she's the Associate Program Director for the Internal Medicine Residency Program. And she's the gold-headed Kane Endowed Education Chair in Internal Medicine, where at the University of California, San Francisco. So, Lekshmi, again, I'm so happy you're here. I can tell this is going to be good. And welcome to the podcast. And what are we talking about today?
Oh, thanks so much for the kind introduction. Really happy to be here. So, as you said, my new title is a little bit of a mouthful, Associate Chair of Mentorship and People Development. And I think it really encapsulates what I'm excited about. What I really love is mentoring trainees, early career faculties, and even peers throughout their personal and professional journeys to have a sustainable and, dare I say it, even fun career in academic medicine.
Fun? Did you dare say fun in
I did
academic
indeed.
medicine?
I
There's
did
no
indeed.
fun in medicine, is there? Let's explore. We talk about mentorship for a couple decades now. It's just senior level smart people who've been around for a million years on the proverbial like the tree trunk and just preaching to the newbies, right? Isn't that what mentorship is?
Oh, it is so funny that you mentioned that because I think that's exactly the classical way that many people conceptualize of mentorship is there's an older, wiser mentor than you, and they're pontificating and giving you advice as you go upon your merry way. The truth is, in academic medicine, we really need to think beyond the traditional dyad structure where it's one mentor, one mentee, and you're kind of yoked to that person for the rest of your life. We need to think much more broadly than that to what the concept in the literature is called is matrix mentorship. And matrix mentorship really says you need, as I call it, a whole bouquet of mentors. You actually need different mentors who play different roles. And absolutely, that senior subject matter expert has a critical role in the mentorship team or in the mentorship matrix. But the reason it's a matrix is it's not just a one-way street or one-way line between mentor and mentee, but actually there's multiple overlapping structures at play in when you look at successful mentorship programs. For example, a great one done by Dr. Carrie Byington at the University of Utah, which really focused on physician scientist mentorship, really looked at mentorship committees that comprised of you yourself at the center, that senior subject matter expert, and also a scientific expert or a scientific mentor, kind of a methods mentor or a project mentor, a peer mentor. They actually said you got to have a peer mentor or a near peer mentor on your committee, and the oft neglected but extremely wise staff mentor.
What?
Success in academic medicine, exactly, really can be enhanced by an amazing staff teammate. And I think many
Mm,
times people don't learn that until they realize it the hard way or
mm,
until they're blown away by a staff partner's incredible wisdom and insight and helpfulness and say, wow, I wish I had met with you 3 months ago when I was dealing with this thorny financial issue or IRB issue or interpersonal issue, what have you. Our staff colleagues, whether they're division managers or finance team members or clinic directors, clinic nurse managers, whatever area of medicine or healthcare you're in, our staff partners have a lot of wisdom and expertise to share. And absolutely, you should, include a staff member on your mentorship team. And these don't have to be formal, PhD thesis style committees where they meet all the time, but rather knowing that also not one person is going to meet all your mentorship needs is really important. I've advised colleagues who say, whenever I meet with ex mentor, I just feel badly about myself afterwards. And then you ask and probe and say like, well, why did you meet with them? Or what are you trying to get out of that? And it's like, well, they always actually give really good advice about career advancement and next steps. And it's like, well, maybe what you're seeking is career advancement advice and emotional support validation. That's not necessarily going to come from the same
Same
person.
person.
You might actually have to say, hey, this is my mentor who's my cheerleader, who will always lift me up and pick me up when I'm down and give me that optimism and hope to keep going now more than ever in these times. And you might have a different mentor who's that kind of concrete, what are my next steps? What is the next scientific conference that we should try to present at or submit to? What's the next abstract idea? What's the next, curriculum development plan? You need different types of mentors to fulfill different functions that you're looking for.
Oh, I'm so glad that you were raising this up and reminding us of having diverse matrixed webs of mentoring relationships and how they all kind of Venn diagram with each other. And I love how you put staff in there because they are the lifeblood of an institution, of a department, of an office, who oftentimes have longevity that goes beyond many, many leaders and faculty whose careers takes, they pop in and out. But you have staff there who their eyes and their ears, and they know the politics and what motivates people. They know the little tricks of the trade and the backdoor ways of doing things, and they've got the great processes. So I'm so happy, Lekshmi, that you've raised our awareness and reminded us of a truly diverse panel, diverse at every step, stage and level. It's so important. Thank you.
Of course. And don't forget peer mentors in that too. I think often we err on relying on peer mentors for just that emotional support and validation and cheerleading and say, hey, are you feeling this? Can you gut check this for me? Oh, are you struggling with this career milestone or next step or decision? That is great. You should absolutely rely on your peers and your friends and your near peers for that type of mentorship. And don't underestimate how your peers can be great collaborators too. Whether you're in the same field or in different field, you might be thinking about a problem together, just approaching it from different lenses. And you may want to write about that. You may just want to be accountability partners with each other to say, hey, on Thursday mornings for 1 hour, we just turn off our phones and try to get some academic work done without our phones dinging just for 1 hour. And can you be my accountability partner in that? Even though we're not writing a paper together per se, you're my partner in accountability. Or, just making progress together, thinking about what can you collaborate on, serving as connectors for each other to say, hey, actually, there's somebody in my institution or in my specialty who's working on something similar, who's gone through something similar to you. So your peer mentors have a lot to offer you beyond the very important emotional support and validation.
And I love how you're directing us to this, our peers as resources beyond socio-emotional, and that includes like things like successful grant application, or it's got scored pretty well, or I've have these template language that you can cut and paste, or yeah, I just published in that
Exactly.
same journal. You're welcome to the my Microsoft Word version of the paper because guess what? It's formatted exactly as it should be formatted. So just send them the paper and they can blank it out and you put in your guts, but now you don't have to go and read the instructions to authors. So there's so many ways that we can help each other. That something took you hours to figure out, have some central repository of some way to share at a faculty meeting, or inviting staff at these meetings to share what should we know, what have you learned, what's a best practice of doing something or other. So that kind of institutionalizing or instituting a way of, all right, what have you learned? What do we all need? Should we warn us off about not doing something or an opportunity or a hard lesson you learned so that we don't have to, make the same mistake. So you're raising such an important point, Lakshmi, about really leveraging relationships above and beyond the social aspects of it. So thank you.
Exactly. And if you're thinking, oh, I have my best friends at work or colleagues in my division or, people who attend in the clinic with me, expanding that network of peers and near peer networks is critical too. And a great way to do that is through your professional society. And of course, Josh is very involved in leadership in IDSA, Infectious Disease Society of America. Similarly, my professional home is the American Thoracic Society, ATS. The most amazing peer mentoring relationships that I've been so privileged to have and learned so much from are my colleagues from my society, where we met initially as trainees and we've kept in touch ever since. And now you're writing a letter for promotion to associate professor for that colleague who you met many years ago as a fellow. So having colleagues at different institutions is really helpful for that gut checking of, hey, is this a paid position at your institution? Is this a paid leadership role? Or what do you do for this? Or even, can you write a letter for me for promotion? There's so much value to having that peer mentorship across institutions, and your society is just such a natural way to make those connections, especially if you're thinking, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, Lakshmi. And you said write a letter of recommendation for my promotion or for some leadership position for an award. I mean,
Right.
we're really bad at self-nominating. So, and even, bad at saying, hey, Lakshmi, would you nominate me for this thing? I feel, we feel too humble to do it or I'm not deserving. But that recognition, it's practicing that. No, this is good, not good, only good for me, but what's good for me is good for my division, good for my department, good for my school, good for my institution. In fact, it's part of our obligation to elevate our work and amplify each other. So that's another way to practice leadership of saying, I think I'd be good for this. I think this would be great for us. Would you also write me a letter of, nomination for this award?
Yeah, that's another side to the coin of mentorship is sponsorship, exactly what you're
Uh,
talking about, which
yeah.
is really deliberately saying, hey, Kim is such a great colleague. I should nominate her for this award. Or if you see that application for a grant cycle come to your inbox about something obscure, instead of just instinctively clicking grant on this, delete, to say,
Delete.
hey, who can I forward this to who actually could really use some bridge funding or some extra funding, or who is an expert at my institution on this? You might think, oh, I shouldn't bother. I'm sure they've seen it. But sometimes people are just in different communities. They may not have seen it. And you might be the person that says it to them. And sponsorship is really not bound by age or seniority. I have sponsored dear colleagues and mentors who are, quote, above me in the hierarchy, in the academic hierarchy, for leadership positions where I said, hey, saw this. Obviously, I'm way too junior to apply for that, but thought of you immediately for this. You would be great for this. And have even senior mentors write back to me to say, seriously? I didn't think I was qualified, and say, no, that thing that you are doing actually totally counts as what they're thinking about or is very much aligned with. Go for it. And so I think that's really helpful to think about sponsorship as something that we can all do, regardless of our career stage, to help each other out now more than ever. And there's a lot of research that shows that women faculty and faculty who are underrepresented in medicine actually are less likely to be sponsored than other faculty. And your point to proactively seeking sponsorship is also really important. Literally, the meeting I was in right before this was a mentorship talk with a colleague who was saying, I keep applying, and I have meetings like this every week, so it's not going to de-identify the person. But this person said, I keep applying to leadership roles and not getting them. What's going on? That's really common. So we talked about our CV of failures, my own CV of failures, the things that I applied for that I didn't get. We all have them. We have to normalize that a little bit because you read out my titles. And of course, you didn't read out the titles that I applied to and didn't get. So we
Yeah.
all know each other's titles, but not what we applied for and didn't get. So normalizing that CV of failures is really important. But also normalizing, hey, I'm going to, I'm now that you I bet a lot of people who know you didn't even know that you were interested in that type of leadership role. Next time you talk to any leader in this domain, just tell them explicitly, hey, to reintroduce myself, I'm Dr. X and I'm really interested in a leadership role in Y. Because people may just vaguely know what you used to do a couple of years ago, but that may not be your focus now. Or people may have assumed incorrectly that you were not really interested in leadership roles because you didn't apply to that one opportunity that came up. So I always tell folks, just as I was telling my colleague right before this call, be active in seeking out that sponsorship to say, hey, just as you said, Kim, could you write me a letter for this role or for this award? Or, hey, I'm actually actively looking for clinical leadership roles or educational leadership roles or research leadership roles or professional society leadership roles. Can you keep me in mind, or is there anyone that you know? Because we don't have roles hanging out that we can just give to people, but it's really helpful to know, oh, this person is really interested, they're really proactive, they're seeking this, this is their focus. I didn't even know that. I thought they were more interested in something else. It's really important and okay to self-sponsor and to seek sponsorship in that way as well.
Oh, brilliant, Lekshmi. So, so smart. And you're right, because I'm remembering when I came here to UTMB just not even a year ago, when people heard, some of my colleagues, they're like, oh, we didn't know you were looking. And I said, well, actually, what is it? We didn't think you'd ever leave Hopkins. And I'm like, we didn't,
Right.
right?
Classic.
But I'm like, well, why would I not? I mean, if there's something with the opportunity to grow and to build, sure. And people are like, well, we wouldn't know that. So that's a great example of how, well, I just assumed because I was, collaborating with people that I'm always trying to be creative and innovative. I just assumed people would know that. Well, you can't assume that at all. And so I love that you've underscored that. And what were you saying? Oh, yeah, you were saying earlier about how this is brand new to me. How the sponsorship, when I, Kim, get emails of, hey, we'd like you to be on this panel or do this thing. And I'm like, oh, actually, I'm good. How about one of my colleagues? Or she'd be great on the panel, or he'd be better, or you don't need me to do that. And it's humbling on the one hand, because oftentimes it's not like, oh no, we really wanted you, Kim. It's more like we just needed somebody, and
Exactly.
people
I
send me
call
somebody that
that,
could.
it's so true. I talk to trainees and early career faculty about that all the time to say, I was a chief resident back in the day, ages ago. And when you're a chief resident, you have what, 300 plus days of resident noon conference to fill. And you invite all these people and you got to fill the slots. And I tell some trainees and early career faculty that sometimes when you're on the other side of that, you may feel guilty or bad about saying no to an opportunity, but then you have to remember that flip side is they are just looking to fill those slots with high quality educators. And if you give them a recommendation, just as you said, whether that's for a committee or a teaching session, that person will be so grateful for you. They'll never hold it against you. They'll always think, oh gosh, this person helped me out in a time of need when I had
Yeah.
to fill the slots.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, with the example of, instead of hitting delete, just pause a moment and go, oh, wait a minute. Hey, come on, Kim. Come on, brain. Let's go, little buddy. Who can we think of? Oh, yeah, at least one person to forward it along. So, but the thing that you said earlier that made me so excited was the twist in my brain. I'm used to getting, as the senior faculty person, opportunities and finding people that I can sponsor. But what you said is so smart. As if I'm early career, mid career, I can actually sponsor advanced career faculty,
Yeah.
existing leaders. Who knew? I have never, Lakshmi, never thought, hey, big boss person, I know you're already the dean or the provost or the chancellor or what, but I just happen to see this opportunity. It never occurred to me, but the way you described that was like, of course, why not? What does it hurt? And oftentimes faculty, people above me like, yeah, I saw that. Oh, thanks for thinking of me. And it's no harm, no foul. But I think that also, raises and elevates you if you're an early career or mid-career person thinking of senior. It raises you on the landscape of being someone who thinks bigger picture and can make connections and has a vision and then recognizes gifts and talents and can kind of just see things. And so I think that it's not only self-serving, but I think that's a really good skill that one could develop of saying, oh my gosh, someday I'm going to be in maybe a bigger leadership position, and it would be imperative for me to put the right people in the right places. And so, what am I looking for? What are those things that I will observe, and that how could I help, right size people and places? So I think there's a lot of value in what you said. I never even thought about it. So it's awesome.
And
Reverse sponsorship, or like
yeah,
thinking you don't have to be anything crazy high up to do that. We can all do that. Like we can all
we can all
mentor.
do that. And
Yeah.
I think that even the little things, right? It's seeing that C-suite position and recommending a colleague is one thing, but even if it's, oh, hey, this med student just applied in surgery and wanted to do surgery plus medical education, which is kind of an unusual combo. You should talk to this surgery resident who just went through that process last year, or, this fellow, this hemonc fellow is exactly in your shoes last year and knows really the nitty gritty of every hemonc fellowship in California, the good, the bad, the ugly, all the nuances in a way that the website can't tell you or I can't tell you. So I think encouraging others too in that way to make mini mentorship connections in ways that they wouldn't even
Mm.
realize. They wouldn't even think of themselves as a mentor, but empowering people actually and kind of training up your future mentors because then they'll remember you. Wow, Lakshmi referred me to them, referred this person to me. I have wisdom to share. Who knew? And then they'll also continue to pay it forward. You hope to create that virtuous cycle of mentorship when you're just by naming it and saying, hey, I thought you'd be a great near peer mentor for this applying resident or this applying med student. And just having a junior person think of themselves as a mentor
Mm.
can actually, in a way, incept the mentorship mindset.
Yeah, and you're creating a culture of this is just what we do. This is
Yeah.
how our blueprint for living. We are all have the radar of looking for, I love how you called it the mini mentorship moments. And I picture little additions to that bouquet you described so beautifully, the mentorship bouquet that if at the looking back at certain stages of our lives, who is in our bouquet? And they can be those mini models of just a little small little beautiful pieces of greenery or smaller flowers, and then you have the one that are bigger, longer standing, longer lasting. But I just think that's such an interesting way of thinking about a tapestry or a bouquet of mentors, and we can all do that.
One of the exercises that I often do with mentees, which is inspired by one of my amazing mentors, Dr. Mala Sarkar, who's a professor of medicine at UCSF and the associate chair of faculty experience and a renowned physician scientist and researcher on equity and primary care and electronic health records and innovation.
Oh,
There's nothing that she hasn't touched, and she would be a great guest on the pod as
she
well.
sounds like the goddess Athena, who's just all
Exactly.
the. And then
So
she made sourdough bread, probably.
exactly. She actually is a classical dancer as well,
Oh, of
so
course,
she's
naturally.
amazing, of course. But she did this exercise with me that was really profound and life-changing. And now I've, paid homage to that exercise that she's created to do it with other trainees and early career faculty of what we call mapping out your mentorship network, which is saying exactly what you said is sometimes you might think, oh, who are my mentors? And you look in your mind's eye at that bouquet. But what she does in this exercise is to say, let's systematically write out who are my mentors, who are my sponsors, who are my mentees, who is my staff partner, who's my near peer mentor, who is that cheerleader in my life, who is the critic who will return that paper in full red. And I'll hate them for a minute, but be super grateful afterwards. That's why I use purple, by the way, for track changes and not red, just slightly less demoralizing when you get a page full of purple than red. And she makes you write those out. And it really does. I do it every time I do it with mentees. I do it myself too. And it really makes you pause and think and say, oh, I actually need to think about, you know, fluffing up a little bit this part of the bouquet, right? I have a lot of mentors, but not a lot of sponsors, or I have a lot of mentees, but I don't have enough peer mentors to connect with, or, I need a staff go-to person to mentor me in all the inner workings, as you said beautifully. And then at the end of the exercise, of course, you make that 1 minute commitment to say, what are you going to do today? Email 3 of these people to say, hey, was just thinking about you, or was hoping we would catch up and grab a coffee and I could share with you one of my latest dilemmas. And I think, again, now more than ever in these times where people might be feeling uncertainties or stressors or having changes, thinking about pivoting their career, sometimes that can feel very isolating. And when you take that explicit step of mapping out your mentorship network, it also makes you feel less alone to say, hey, beyond my immediate senior subject matter expert mentor, I have this whole network I can tap into for advice. And that is really helpful. And again, even people who you might not have talked to in a year or more, they're still in your network and they would be so happy to get an email from you to say, hey, was just thinking of you, would love to hop on a quick Zoom to talk out a little dilemma with you that I shared. And so I think that can help you feel less isolated. And when you're at a crossroads or at a pivot point or having a career dilemma or deciding between should I stay or should I go, or different job descriptions or different career trajectories, you know that your network is actually more than you even thought.
Mm. So important. And you're making me think of what you said earlier was also important. Someone may be thinking, oh my gosh, this bouquet, it's so big. I don't have that kind of time to be nurturing all these relationships. You said something earlier, which is so true. And you're just giving an example. You don't have to schedule weekly hour meetings with every
Yes.
person in your bouquet. It can be, I'm just envisioning in my calendar, say once a week, maybe I've designated half an hour once a week to network. And I could literally go through my list in my bouquet, and it could be email Lekshmi, text Heather, send a note to Cindy, buy
Yeah.
a card for Jennifer. It can be something very, just as a reminder, a tickler that yes, and you're so right. Not everything needs to be a long, drawn out thing. That whole, hey, was just thinking of you. Would love to catch up soon. Or can we schedule a call? And even, I find myself, because maybe I'm really independent, thinking, well, no, I got this stuff figured out. I don't want to burden anyone with my problems. And nobody wants to hear bad news. No one wants to hear anything kind of crummy. And yet, when I have been on the phone with somebody and someone will say, come on, let's just hop on a call. And I'm like, nothing much to talk about. Inevitably, within 10 minutes, I'm like, well, nothing's really. It's the same old, this little bit of this, little bit of that. And my friends who know me well, come on, tell me more. And then before you know it, it's, 40 minutes, we're having a great conversation. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. So it gets back to, I think what you're saying, Lakshmi, where we feel so lonely sometimes and isolated and so stressed and everything just tough. And you don't want to be another wet blanket and be a boo-hoo kind of person. And if we learn to be vulnerable, it serves so many purposes. So we kind of set this thing of like, hey, we're all humans. We got stuff going on. As you pointed out, you maybe not talk to somebody in a year, but the little ding of a, hey, just saying hi, things are great. That little touch point can take a second and can yield so much fruit for everybody, not only for yourself, but for the other person. And I'll stop
Totally.
talking here.
And even that micro, you described a micro moment of gratitude too. Sometimes, again, sending that little note of thinking of you and just thankful for you, that person might be having a terrible day or a terrible month or a terrible time in their life, a hard time. And just that random out of the blue note from a mentee or a former mentee saying, thinking of you and grateful for you, or closing the loop. Remember when I talked to you last year about this big decision? Guess what? I took your advice, or I didn't take your advice, and this is what happened. Just a little bit of follow-up and closing the loop. Thank you again for taking the time. It's okay if it's late, right? Truly, better late than never. Those micro moments of gratitude mean a lot for both you and the mentor alike.
Love it. This is great stuff. Dr. Lekshmi Santhosh, this has been a great conversation. I know that if we keep talking, you're gonna get me going down all kinds of rabbit holes with you. But I'd love for you to kind of close up the conversation with any kind of anything you'd like to impart or remind us about. You've hit so many important concepts of broadening our perspective of mentoring and dilemmas in this uncertain times and some best practices. What else would you like to share with us in closing?
Yeah, thank you again. I think that one of the things that's really striking and important is when you look at exit interviews, exit surveys. Why do people leave academia? Why do they leave their institution? And why do they stay? Mentorship is actually a key driver of why people stay and why people remain in academia despite the hard times or the challenges or the uncertainty. So, and when you close your eyes and you think of your own mentors, thinking about how can you pay that forward on folks, especially during times of uncertainty, I think other things to share is remember that if you're a mentor listening too, you're not alone. You too are a part of a mentoring network for your mentee, and reminding them of that is sometimes helpful to say, hey, please consult with, this is just my perspective. Please consult with other members of your mentoring team or mentoring network to get their perspective too, because lots of perspectives may be very helpful, especially in times of uncertainty. I think that's one thing to remind mentees of and remind yourself of, ooh, I don't have all the answers, but you have a team. And if you don't know who your team is, I can help you find a new team member or refer you or connect you to somebody who might be able to answer this or offer a fresh perspective. I think also leading and clarifying values and leading with support is really important, because if you clarify values and lead with support, that actually gives you the psychological safety to sometimes give that tough critique that, ooh, I read your aims page and I have no idea what's going on. We actually have to start from square one. Or I hear you that you're applying and not getting leadership positions. Why do you think that might be? Is it related to your interview style? Is it related to your CV? Let's dive into that together. And I think if you lead with support and empathy and valuing that colleague as a human, that actually can help you delve into the meat of it, the tougher conversations, the harder critiques, than if you start just by jumping straight into it.
Yeah. And you said something again very brilliant, and that is something about our teams, our mentoring teams, and our matrix doesn't have to be stagnant. It can
Yes.
always grow. Just get a bigger vase. So we can always add and add and add. It's not as if like, well, I have all those things. Check, check, check. We are not stagnant. We are always changing. Everything is rapidly changing. So there's ample opportunity to explore growing our bouquets and growing the matrix and the tapestry.
And sometimes discarding that flower that's not serving you anymore can
Yes,
be helpful too.
that's right. Pruning the bouquet, going, oh, you were beautiful. You were so beautiful, my bouquet. I honor you. I respect you. And now it's time to put you in the trash bin.
Right. And find a new voice or a new perspective to help you grow.
Yeah, that's great. Lakshmi, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thanks, Josh. If you're listening to this, you're exactly right. Super innovative, super great educator. This is a great episode. And if you want to be in the podcast, why don't you nominate someone or even yourself? Thanks, Lekshmi.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Faculty Factory podcast. We are a faculty development community sharing tools to build academic leaders in healthcare. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast? Please visit facultyfactory.org/contact and send me a message there. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Office of Faculty Affairs at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas.